You will be in charge of supervising the Jews. Your survival will depend on that.
I have until July 22nd to make sure that this entire sector is Jew-free.
We have no place to go.
I saw a place where I can hide you, where no one would ever think of looking for you.
Talk to me about this story of your mother. I'm so curious. Was this something that you grew up and she gradually told you? Was there a defining moment when she sat you down and said, "This is my story"? What did that look like for better understanding who your mom was?
You know, when my mom came to this country in 1949, she literally pulled into Ellis Island on the ship, and in front of the Statue of Liberty put a do not disturb sign over her memory. So it wasn't her plan to really ever talk about it. It wasn't until I was a teenager and she was confronted with a Holocaust denier, actually a very young person, and she was so shocked that somebody who wasn't even alive back then could be brainwashed to think that it had never happened. And I remember her saying, you know, I've allowed evil and I've allowed enemy to win, because if we don't start speaking out, history will repeat itself. And so she slowly started speaking, and it took me quite a few years before I really got the grasp of her story. Most of me just didn't want to know it. It looked too painful. It took a long time.
Wow. And then, when it comes to the point that she's sharing it in this medium where so many are able to, take a glimpse into her life and what she experienced during World War II. Dan, talk to me about how you even approached, bringing this story to screen.
Somewhere around 25 or 30 years ago, and I couldn't really tell you when, I was driving home one night and listening, it was a Sunday night, listening to the radio. There was a show in LA where I lived at the time called Religion on the Line that Dennis Prager used to host. And I heard Irene telling her story. And I pulled into my driveway and I was so captivated by the story that I spent the next 2 hours in the driveway listening to the radio. And then the next morning I called the radio station and I said, my name's Dan Gordon. I'm not a psycho. I'm not a stalker. I'm actually a screenwriter. I've got credits and you can check me out. And I heard this show last night, and could you please pass my telephone number along to Mrs. Updike, because I'd like to acquire her life story rights and do a motion picture based on her story. And about 3 or 4 hours later, I get a call, and there was this delightfully accented lady on the other end who said, "Hello, Janye, this is Irene." And that began the true love affair with Irene, who my mother had already passed by that time, and Irene I came to think of as a second mother, and just adored her. And I took her to many of the schools that she spoke at, and these were inner city kids by and large, and kids who had no notion of the Holocaust, didn't know what this little 5'2" blonde lady with the accent was there talking about. And within 5 minutes, she would have them in the palm of her hand. And she would always say, at the end, even the big macho boys come for a hug from Irene. And they did. It was amazing to see her rapport with young people. It was extraordinary. It was really inspiring.
Absolutely.
I love that. And you can tell from the movie that she is just a special individual and has bravery and courage. Jeannie, maybe talk to me a little bit about that aspect of your mom, and how, you're watching the film and you're like, she's one person, and here she was able to save, a dozen, and then the lineage that follows with that. Talk to me maybe a little bit about, how we can actually make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. That was my mom's mantra, to say that one person can make a difference. And, it's totally true. We may not be able to do the big things that she did, but we have opportunity every day, to show a kindness, to help somebody, to stand up for what's right or stand against what's wrong. So, that's really, that was her basic reason for continuing to, let people know that we are all part of one human family and we're all connected. And, when we stop caring for each other, when we stop being human, that's when we're in real trouble.
I mean, so much of the story, sadly, is very relevant today. Dan, maybe talk to me a little bit about, writing the screenplay, probably not thinking it would be as relevant as it is, or did you? Talk to me about what that struggle looked like getting it on page.
No, I never thought when I wrote the screenplay that I would ever live to see a time in which genocidal mass murderers would be burning their way through Jewish villages and Jews would be hiding from people who wanted to massacre them for the crime of being Jews. But that's exactly what happened on October 7th. There are things in there which were as much as I know about the Holocaust and have family members who are in the Holocaust and interviewed literally hundreds and hundreds of people and studied it and seen all the footage, it was still academic up until October 8th, when all of a sudden you see the atrocities of which people are capable and how horrific they can be. So there are scenes in there which I wrote, which are very, very difficult for me to watch because I know now people to whom that happened to their family members. I was in those places that still smelled of the blood, that were still smelled of the smoke. I have a dear friend who, lost five family members on that day, both parents, all three children, all murdered. And not quickly and not pleasantly. So yeah, I never realized how relevant it would become. And someone was just asking me about that. It took 28 or so years to get this movie made. And the fellow who's interviewing me is Catholic, and he said, maybe that's the enemy trying to hold it back. I said, it could be, and maybe that's God saying, wait, there's a better time for this to come out. And it's certainly one way or the other is more relevant today than ever.
Jeannie, talk to me about seeing your mom's story this way. I couldn't help them immediately when I saw Sophie. I thought of The Book Thief, and so I loved seeing her, embody your mom, and then being able to actually shoot in Poland. Like, how did it feel for you to see it?
Well, Dad's story was a Broadway play first, and that was huge for me to sit in an audience and see a play about my mom. I didn't miss one night. I was there for every single performance, and I've had the same experience. I've got to do to a lot of the film festivals and be there. And I get asked, do you want to sit in the green room? And it's like, absolutely not. I have a chance to see a mom that I haven't seen for 23 years, and I wouldn't miss it. And, I didn't know my mom when she was that age at 19 or 20. But Sophie is everything that I would imagine that she would have looked like and how she would have acted. So it's an unbelievable, amazing treat to be able to see that. So I wasn't part of the filming. I spend most of my time actually traveling the country sharing her story. So that's what I was doing. So, getting to see it was a gift that I can't fully describe.
Guys, thank you so much for taking the time today. I cannot wait for audiences to get to see this film and to see how they internalize it and then what it produces in them as they go out, and it kind of changes the lens for their worldview too.